Starting in the 1970s, India became more and more Srila Prabhupada's home base, and his travels to the West became like tours away from home. While traveling to America in the winter of 1973, Srila Prabhupada caught a cold and tried to get rid of it by moving from Los Angeles to Dallas, which he had heard was sunny and warm, but Dallas was also overcast. Prabhupada began talking of returning to Mayapur as the only place where he could be at ease and get well. It would be a long trip back, so he had made no definite decision. But one night, about 1 a.m., he walked into the room adjoining his and woke his servant and his secretary. "Let's go back home, back to Godhead," Prabhupada said to them, while standing in the darkness of the unlit room. His disciples awoke and offered their obeisances at Prabhupada's feet, wondering what he meant. "Prabhupada?" they asked. "Yes," he repeated, "I want to go back to Godhead. I want to go to Mayapur." So they returned to Mayapur as soon as possible. Once in Mayapur, Srila Prabhupada's health recovered. There he was most informal and pleased. In those early years, there was not much building development, and the devotees were undergoing austerities just to live there. Srila Prabhupada mixed with them freely and in a friendly way. They would walk into his room, and sometimes he would walk into theirs. Sometimes even his own servants didn't know exactly where he was at different times of the day. He might be on the roof alone, or sometimes he would walk unaccompanied out to the front road. The devotees at Mayapur couldn't help but appreciate that Prabhupada was special when he was living in the dawn. They felt it was like the informality of Krishna in Goloka, as contrasted to Krishna's opulence in Dwarka. The Prabhupada in Mayapur was special and informal in that way. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, entitled The Prayers of Queen Kunti, Chapter 43. Shri Krishna Krishna Saka Vrishne Vrishabhavani Drub Rajanya Vamsha Dhanana Bhavargavirya Govinda Godvija Sarati Haravatara Yogeshvara Kilo Guru Bhagavan Namas. O Krishna, O friend of Arjuna, O chief amongst the descendants of Vrishni, you are the destroyer of those political parties which are disturbing elements on this earth. Your prowess never deteriorates. You are the proprietor of the transcendental abode, and you descend to relieve the distresses of the cows, the brahmanas, and the devotees. You possess all mystic powers, and you are the preceptor of the entire universe. You are the Almighty God, and I offer you my respectful obeisances. Purport. A summary of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna is made herein by Srimati Kunti Devi. The Almighty Lord has his eternal transcendental abode, where he is engaged in keeping Surabhi cows. He is served by hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune. He descends on the material world to reclaim his devotees and to annihilate the disturbing elements in groups of political parties and kings who are supposed to be in charge of administration work. He creates, maintains, and annihilates by his unlimited energies, and still he is always full with prowess and does not deteriorate in potency. The cows, the brahmanas, and the devotees of the Lord are all objects of his special attention because they are very important factors for the general welfare of living beings. Text 44. Sutta Goswami said, the Lord, thus hearing the prayers of Kunti Devi composed in choice words for his glorification, mildly smiled. That smile was as enchanting as his mystic power. Purport. Anything that is enchanting in the world is said to be a representation of the Lord. The conditioned souls who are engaged in trying to lord it over the material world are also enchanted by his mystic powers, but his devotees are enchanted in a different way by the glories of the Lord, and his merciful blessings are upon them. His energy is displayed in different ways as electrical energy works in manifold capacities. Srimati Kunti Devi has prayed to the Lord just to enunciate a fragment of his glories. All his devotees worship him in that way by chosen words, and therefore the Lord is known as Uttama Shloka. No amount of chosen words is sufficient to enumerate the Lord's glory, and yet he is satisfied by such prayers as the Father is satisfied even by the broken linguistic attempts of the growing child. The word Maya is used both in the sense of delusion and mercy. Herein the word Maya is used in the sense of the Lord's mercy upon Kunti Devi. Text 45. Thus accepting the prayers of Srimati Kunti Devi, the Lord subsequently informed other ladies of his departure by entering the palace of Hastinapur. But upon preparing to leave, he was stopped by King Yudhishthir, who implored him lovingly. Purport. No one could make Lord Krishna stay at Hastinapur, but when he decided to start for Dwarka. But the simple request of King Yudhishthir that the Lord remain there for a few days more was immediately effective. This signifies that the power of King Yudhishthir was loving affection, which the Lord could not deny. The Almighty God is thus conquered only by loving service and nothing else. He is fully independent in all his dealings, but he voluntarily accepts obligations by the loving affection of his pure devotees. Text 46. King Yudhishthir, who was much aggrieved, could not be convinced, despite instructions by great sages headed by Vyas and the Lord Krishna himself, the performer of superhuman feats, and despite all historical evidence. Purport. The pious King Yudhishthir was mortified because of the massacre of human beings in the battle of Kurukshetra, especially on his account. Duryodhana was there on the throne, and he was doing well in his administration, and in one sense there was no need of fighting, but on the principle of justice, Yudhishthir was to replace him. The whole clique of politics centered around this point, and all the kings and residents of the whole world became involved in this fight between the rival brothers. Lord Krishna was also there on the side of King Yudhishthir. It is said in the Mahabharata Adi Parva that 640 million men were killed in the 18 days of the battle of Kurukshetra, and some hundreds of thousands were missing. Hundreds and thousands were missing. Practically, this was the greatest battle in the world within 5,000 years. This mass killing, simply to enthrone Maharaj Yudhishthir, was too mortifying, so he tried to be convinced with evidences from histories by great sages like Vyas and the Lord himself that the fight was just because the cause was just. But Maharaj Yudhishthir would not be satisfied, even though he was instructed by the greatest personalities of the time. Krishna is designated herein as the performer of superhuman actions, but in this particular instance, neither he nor Vyas could convince King Yudhishthir. Does it mean that he failed to be a superhuman actor? No, certainly not. The interpretation is that the Lord is Ishvara, or the supersoul in the hearts of both King Yudhishthir and Vyas, performed still more superhuman action because the Lord desired it. As supersoul of King Yudhishthir, he did not allow the king to be convinced by the words of Vyas and others, including himself, because he desired that the king hear instructions from the dying Bhishma Dev, who was another great devotee of the Lord. The Lord wanted that at the last stage of his material existence, the great warrior Bhishma Dev see him personally and see his beloved grandchildren, King Yudhishthir, etc., now situated on the throne, and thus pass away very peacefully. Bhishma Dev was not at all satisfied to fight against the Pandavas, who were his beloved, fatherless grandchildren. But the Kshatriyas are also very stern people, and therefore he was obliged to take the side of Duryodhana, because he was maintained at the expense of Duryodhana. Besides this, the Lord also desired that King Yudhishthir be pacified by the words of Bhishma Dev, so that the world could see that Bhishma Dev excelled all in knowledge, including the Lord himself. Text 47. King Yudhishthir, son of Dharma, overwhelmed by the death of his friends, was aggrieved just like a common materialistic man. O sages, thus deluded by affection, he began to speak. Purport. King Yudhishthir, though he was not expected to become aggrieved like a common man, became deluded by worldly affection by the will of the Lord, just as Arjuna was apparently deluded. A man who sees knows well that the living entity is neither the body nor the mind, but is transcendental to the material conception of life. The common man thinks of violence and non-violence in terms of the body, but that is a kind of delusion. Everyone is duty-bound according to one's occupational duties. A Kshatriya is bound to fight for the right cause, regardless of the opposite party. In such discharge of duty, one should not be disturbed by annihilation of the material body, which is only an external dress of the living soul. All this was perfectly known to Maharaj Yudhishthir, but by the will of the Lord he became just like a common man, because there was another great idea behind this delusion. The king would be instructed by Bhishma, as Arjuna was instructed by the Lord himself. Text 48. King Yudhishthir said, O my lots, I am the most sinful man. Just see my heart, which is full of ignorance. This body, which is ultimately meant for others, has killed many phalanxes of men. Purport. A solid phalanx of 21,870 chariots, 21,870 elephants, 109,650 infantry, and 65,600 cavalry is called a Okshohini, and many Okshohinis were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Maharaj Yudhishthir, as the most pious king of the world, takes for himself the responsibility for killing such a huge number of living beings because the battle was fought to reinstate him on the throne. This body is, after all, meant for others. While there is life in the body, it is meant for the service of others, and when it is dead, it is meant to be eaten by dogs and jackals or maggots. He is sorry because of such a temporary body. He is sorry because for such a temporary body, such a huge massacre was committed. Text 49. I have killed many boys, brahmanas, well-wishers, friends, parents, preceptors, and brothers. Though I live millions of years, I will not be relieved from the hell that awaits me for all these sins. Purport. Whenever there is a war, there is certainly a massacre of many innocent living beings, such as boys, brahmanas, and women, whose killing is considered to be the greatest of sins. They are all innocent creatures, and in all circumstances, killing of them is forbidden in the scriptures. Maharaj Yudhishthir was aware of these mass killings. Similarly, there were friends, parents, and preceptors also on both sides, and all of them were killed. It was simply horrible for him to think of such killing, and therefore he was thinking of residing in hell for millions and billions of years. Text 50. There is no sin for a king who kills for the right cause, who is engaged in maintaining his citizens. But this injunction is not applicable to me. Purport. Maharaj Yudhishthir thought that although he was not actually involved in the administration of the kingdom, which is being carried on well by Duryodhana without harm to the citizens, he caused the killing of so many living beings only for his personal gain of the kingdom from the hands of Duryodhana. The killing was committed not in the course of administration, but for the sake of self-aggrandizement, and as such, he thought himself responsible for all the sins. Text 51. I have killed many friends of women, and I have thus caused enmity to such an extent that it is not possible to undo it by material welfare work. Purport: the Griya Medis are those whose only business is to perform welfare work for the sake of material prosperity. Such material prosperity is sometimes hampered by sinful activities, for the materialist is sure to commit sins, even unintentionally, in the course of discharging material duties. To get relief from such sinful reactions, the Vedas prescribe several kinds of sacrifices. It is said in the Vedas that by performing the Ashvamedha Yajna, horse sacrifice, one can get relief from even Brahmahatya, killing of a Brahmana. Yudhishthira Maharaj performed this Ashvamedha Yajna, but he thinks that even by performing such yajnas, it is not possible to get relief from the great sins committed. In war, either the husband or the brother, or even the father or sons go to fight, and when they are killed, a fresh enmity is created, and thus a chain of actions and reactions increases, which is not possible to be counteracted even by thousands of Ashvamedha Yajnas. Can you go there? Can you bring my water if you do go up there? Going upstairs for some peace. It's very loud. The way of work, karma, is like that. It creates one action and another reaction simultaneously, and thus increases the chain of material activities, binding the performer in material bondage. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 27 through 28, the remedy is suggested that such actions and reactions of the path of work can be checked only when work is done on behalf of the Supreme Lord. The battle of Kurukshetra was actually fought by the will of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, as it is evident from his version, and only by his will was Yudhishthira placed on the throne of Hastinapur. Therefore, factually, no sin whatsoever touched the Pandavas, who were only the order carriers of the Lord. For others, who declare war out of personal interest, the whole responsibility lies on them. Text 52. As it is not possible to filter muddy water through mud, or purify a wine-stained pot with wine, it is not possible to counteract the killing of men by sacrificing animals. That's very interesting. Purport: Ashvamedha Yajnas or Gomedha Yajnas, sacrifices in which a horse or a bull is sacrificed, were not, of course, animals sacrificed on the altar of Yajna were rejuvenated and a new life was given to them. It was just to prove the efficacy of the hymns of the Vedas. By recitation of the hymns of the Vedas in the proper way, certainly the performer gets relief from the reactions of sins, but in case of such sacrifices improperly done under inexpert management, surely one has to become responsible for animal sacrifice. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, There is no possibility of performing the yagyas perfectly for want of expert brahmanas who are able to conduct such yagyas. Maharaj Yudhishthira therefore gives a hint to performing sacrifices in the age of Kali. In the Kali Yuga, the only sacrifice recommended is the performance of Harinam Yagya inaugurated by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But one should not indulge in animal killing and counteract it by performing the Harinam Yagya. Those who are devotees of the Lord never kill an animal for self-interest, and as the Lord ordered Arjuna, they do not refrain from performing the duty of a Kshatriya. The whole purpose, therefore, is served when everything is done for the will of the Lord. This is possible only for the devotees. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 8th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Prayers by Queen Kunti and Parikshit Save. Chapter 9, The Passing Away of Bhishma Dev in the Presence of Lord Krishna. Text 1. Sutta Goswami said, being afraid for having killed so many subjects on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Maharaj Yudhishthira went to the scene of the massacre. There Bhishma Dev was lying on a bed of arrows about to pass away. Purport. In this 9th chapter, as it is willed by Lord Sri Krishna, Bhishma Dev will impart instructions to King Yudhishthira on the subject of occupational duties. Bhishma Dev will also offer his last prayer to the Lord on the verge of passing away from this mortal world and thus become liberated from the bondage of further material engagements. Bhishma Dev was endowed with the power of leaving his material body at will, and by his lying down on the bed of arrows was his own choice. This passing away of the great warrior attracted the attention of all the contemporary elites, and all of them were assembled there to show their feelings of love, respect, and affection for the great soul. Text 2. At that time, all his brothers followed him on the beautiful chariots drawn by first-class horses decorated with gold ornaments. With them were Vyas and rishis like Domya, the learned priest of the Pandavas, and others. Text 3. O sage, amongst the Brahmanas, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, also followed, seated on a chariot with Arjuna. Thus King Yudhishthira appeared very aristocratic, like Kuvera, surrounded by his companions, the Guyakas. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna wanted the Pandavas to be present before Bhishma Dev in the most aristocratic order, so that he might be pleased to see them happy at the time of his death. Kuvera is the richest of all the demigods, and herein King Yudhishthira appeared like him, Kuvera, for the procession along with Sri Krishna was quite appropriate to the royalty of King Yudhishthira. Text 4. Seeing him, Bhishma, lying on the ground, like a demigod fallen from the sky, the Pandava king Yudhishthira, along with his younger brothers and Lord Krishna, bowed down. Lord Krishna was also a younger cousin of Maharaj Yudhishthira, as well as the intimate friend of Arjuna. But all the family members of the Pandavas knew Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord, although conscious of his supreme position, always behaved in a humanly custom, and so he also bowed down before the dying Bhishma Dev, as if he were one of the younger brothers of King Yudhishthira. Text 5. Just to see the chief of the descendants of King Bharata, Bhishma, all the great souls in the universe, namely the rishis, amongst the demigods, brahmanas and kings, all situated in the quality of goodness, were assembled there. Purport. The rishis are those who have attained perfection by spiritual achievements. Such spiritual achievements can be earned by all, whether one is a king or a mendicant. Bhishma Dev himself was also one of the Brahmarshis and the chief of the descendants of King Bharata. All rishis are situated in the quality of goodness. All of them assembled there on hearing the news of the great warrior's impending death. Text 6 and 7. All the sages like Parvat Muni, Narada, Domya, Vyas, the incarnation of God, Brihadashva, Bharadwaj, and Parashuram, and disciples, Vasishta, Indrapramada, Shrita, Gritsamada, Asita, Kakshivan, Gautama, Atri, Kaushika, and Sudarshan were present. Purport. Parvat Muni is considered to be one of the oldest sages. He is almost always a constant companion of Narada Muni. They are also spacemen competent to travel in the air without the help of any material vehicle. Parvata Muni is also a Devarshi, or a great sage amongst the demigods like Narada. He was present along with Narada at the sacrificial ceremony of Maharaj Janamejaya. He was present along with Narada at the sacrificial ceremony of Maharaj Janamejaya, son of Maharaj Parikshit. Janamejaya is the son of Maharaj Parikshit. Okay. In this sacrifice, all the snakes of the world were to be killed. Parvata Muni and Narada Muni are called Gandharvas also because they can travel in the air, singing the glories of the Lord. Since they can travel in the air, they observe Draupadi's Swayamvar ceremony, selecting of her own husband from the air. Like Narada Muni, Parvata Muni also used to visit the royal assembly in the heaven of King Indra. As a Gandharva, sometimes he visited the royal assembly of Kuvera, one of the important demigods. Both Narada and Parvata were once in trouble with the daughter of Maharaj Srinjaya. Maharaj Srinjaya got the benediction of a son by Parvata Muni. Narada Muni is inevitably associated with the narrations of the Puranas. He is described in the Bhagavatam. In his previous life, he was the son of a maidservant, but by good association with pure devotees, he became enlightened in devotional service, and in the next life, he became a perfect man comparable with himself only. In the Mahabharata, his name is mentioned in many places. He is the principal Devarshi, or the chief sage amongst the demigods. He is the son and disciple of Brahmaji, and from him the disciplic succession in the line of Brahma has been spread. He initiated Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, and many celebrated devotees of the Lord. He initiated even Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedic literatures, and from Vyasadeva, Madhvacharya was initiated, and thus the Madhva Sampradaya, in which the Gaudiya Sampradaya is also included, has spread all over the universe. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu belonged to this Madhva Sampradaya, therefore Brahmaji, Narada, Vyas, down to Madhva, Chaitanya, and the Goswamis, all belong to the same line of disciplic succession. Narada Ji has instructed many kings from time immemorial. In the Bhagavatam, we can see that he instructed Prahlad Maharaj while he was in the womb of his mother, and he instructed Vasudeva, father of Krishna, as well as Maharaj Yudhishthira. Domya, a great sage, who practiced severe penances at Utkuchaka Tirtha, and was appointed royal priest of the Pandava kings. He acted as the priest in many religious functions of the Pandavas, such as the Samskara, and also each of the Pandavas was attended by him at the betrothal of Draupadi. He was present even during the exile of the Pandavas, and used to advise them in circumstances when they were perplexed. He instructed them how to live incognito for 1 year, and his instructions were strictly followed by the Pandavas during that time. His name is mentioned also when the general funeral ceremony was performed after the battle of Kurukshetra. In the Anushasana Parva of Mahabharata, he gave religious instructions very elaborately to Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was actually the right type of priest of a householder, for he could guide the Pandavas on the right path of religion. A priest is meant for guiding the householder progressively in the right path of ashrama dharma, or the occupational duty of a particular caste. There is practically no difference between the family priest and the spiritual master. The sages, saints, and brahmanas were especially meant for such functions. Badarayana Vyasadeva. He is known as Krishna, Krishna Dwapayana, Satyavati Sutta, Parasharya, Parashuratmaja, Badarayana, Vedavyasa, etc. He was the son of Mahamuni Parashara in the womb of Satyavati prior to her betrothal with Maharaj Shantanu. Prior to her betrothal with Maharaj Shantanu, the father of the great general, grandfather Bhishma Dev. Wow. So Vyasadeva and Bhishma Dev are actually brothers. Half brothers. This far out. He is a powerful incarnation of Narayana, and he broadcasts the Vedic wisdom to the world. As such, Vyasadeva is offered respects before one chants the Vedic literature, especially the Puranas. Shukadeva Goswami was his son, and rishis like Vaishampayana were his disciples for different branches of the Vedas. He is the author of the great epic Mahabharata and the great transcendental literature Bhagavatam. The Brahma Sutras, the Vedanta Sutras, or Badarayana Sutras were compiled by him. Amongst sages, he is the most respected author by dint of severe penances. When he wanted to record the great epic Mahabharata for the welfare of all people in the age of Kali, he was feeling the necessity of a powerful writer who could take up his dictation. By the order of Brahmaji, Sri Ganeshji took up the charge of noting down the dictation on the condition that Vyasadeva would not stop dictation for a moment. The Mahabharata was thus compiled by the joint endeavor of Vyas and Ganesh. By the order of his mother Satyavati, who was later married to Maharaj Shantanu, and by the request of Bhishma Dev, the eldest son of Maharaj Shantanu, by his first wife, the Ganges, he begot 3 brilliant sons, whose names are Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. The Mahabharata was compiled by Vyasadeva after the battle of Kurukshetra and after the death of all the heroes of Mahabharata. It was first spoken in the royal assembly of Maharaj Janamejaya, the son of Maharaj Parikshit. Dang, there's so much to try to comprehend here. Still trying to put it together, all these names and everything. Brihadashva, an ancient sage who used to meet Maharaj Yudhishthir now and then. First of all, he met Maharaj Yudhishthir at Kamyavan. I'm trying to figure out, okay, Bhishma Dev. Anyways, I'm not going to think about it right now. I'll think about it later. Okay, Brihadashva, an ancient sage who used to meet Maharaj Yudhishthir now and then. First of all, he met Maharaj Yudhishthir at Kamyavan. This sage narrated the history of Maharaj Nala. There is another Brihadashva who was the son of the Ishvaku dynasty. Bharadwaj. He is one of the 7 great sages and was present at the time of the birth ceremony of Arjuna. The powerful rishis sometimes undertook severe penances on the shore of the Ganges, and his ashram is still celebrated at Prayagadam. It is learned that this rishi, while taking bath in the Ganges, happened to meet Gritachi, one of the beautiful society girls of heaven, and thus he discharged semen, which was kept and preserved in an earthen pot, and from which Drona was born. So Dronacharya is the son of Bharadwaj Muni. Others say that Bharadwaj, the father of Drona, is a different person from Maharshi Bharadwaj. He was a great devotee of Brahma. Once he approached Dronacharya and requested him to stop the battle of Kurukshetra. Parashuram, or Renukasuta. He is the son of Maharshi Jamadagni and Srimati Renuka. Thus, he is also known as Renukasuta. He is one of the powerful incarnations of God, and he killed the Kshatriya community as a whole 21 times. With the blood of the Kshatriyas, he pleased the souls of his forefathers. Later on, he underwent severe penances at the Mahendra Parvata. After taking the whole earth from the Kshatriyas, he gave it in charity to Kashyapa Muni. Parashuram instructed the Dhanur Veda, or the science of fighting, to Dronacharya because he happened to be a Brahmana. Wow, Parashuram taught Dronacharya the art of fighting. He was present during the coronation of Maharaj Yudhishthir, and he celebrated the function along with other great rishis. Parashuram is so old that he met both Rama and Krishna at different times. He fought with Rama, but he accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He also praised Arjuna when he saw him with Krishna. When Bhishma refused to marry Amba, who wanted him to become her husband, Amba met Parashuram, and by her request only, he asked Bhishma Dev to accept her as his wife. Bhishma refused to obey his order, although he was one of the spiritual masters of Bhishma Dev. Parashuram fought with Bhishma Dev when Bhishma neglected his warning. Both of them fought very severely, and at last Parashuram was pleased with Bhishma and gave him the benediction of becoming the greatest fighter in the world. Vasishta, the great celebrated sage among the Brahmanas, well known as the Brahmarshi Vasishtadev. He is a prominent figure in both the Ramayana and Mahabharata periods. He celebrated the coronation ceremony of the personality of Godhead Sri Rama. He was present also on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He could approach all the higher and lower planets, and his name is also connected with the history of Hiranyakashipu. There was a great tension between him and Vishvamrita, who wanted his Kamadhenu wish-fulfilling cow. Vasishta Muni refused to spare his Kamadhenu, and for this Vishvamrita killed his 100 sons. As a perfect Brahmana, he tolerated all the taunts of Vishvamrita. Once he tried to commit suicide on account of Vishvamrita's torture, but all his attempts were unsuccessful. He jumped from a hill, but the stones on which he fell became a stack of cotton, and thus he was saved. He jumped into the ocean, but the waves washed him ashore. He jumped into the river, but the river also washed him ashore. Thus all his suicide attempts were unsuccessful. He is also one of the 7 rishis and husband of Arundhati, the famous star. Indra Pramada, another celebrated rishi. Trita, one of the 3 sons of Prajapati Gautama. He was the 3rd son, and his other 2 brothers were known as Ikat and Dvita. All the brothers were great sages and strict followers of the principles of religion. By dint of severe penances, they were promoted to Brahmaloka, the planet where Brahmaji lives. Once, Tritamuni fell into a well. He was an organizing worker of many sacrifices. And as one of the great sages, he also came to show respect to Bhishmaji at his deathbed. He was one of the 7 sages in the Varuna Loka. He hailed from the western countries of the world. As such, most probably he belonged to the European countries. At that time, the whole world was under one Vedic culture. Kritsamara, one of the sages of the heavenly kingdom. He was a close friend of Indra, the king of heaven, and was as great as Brihaspati. He used to visit the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthir, and he also visited the place where Bhishmadev breathed his last. Sometimes he explained the glories of Lord Shiva before Maharaj Yudhishthir. He was the son of Vitahavya, and he resembled in features the body of Indra. Sometimes the enemies of Indra mistook him to be Indra and arrested him. He was a great scholar of the Rig Veda, and thus he was highly respected by the Brahmana community. He lived the life of celibacy and was powerful in every respect. Asita. There was a king of the same name, but herein the Asita mentioned is the Asita Devala Rishi, a great powerful sage of the time. He explained to his father 1,500,000 verses from the Mahabharata. He was one of the members in the snake sacrifice of Maharaj Janamejaya. He was also present during the coronation ceremony of Maharaj Yudhishthir, along with other great rishis. He also gave Maharaj Yudhishthir instructions while he was on the Anjana hill. He was also one of the devotees of Lord Shiva. Kakshivan, one of the sons of Gautama Muni, and the father of the great sage Chandakausika. He was one of the members of parliament of Maharaj Yudhishthir. Atri. Atri Muni was a great Brahmana sage and was one of the mental sons of Brahmaji. Brahmaji is so powerful that simply by thinking of a son, he can have it. These sons are known as Manasaputras. Out of 7 Manasaputras of Brahmaji, and out of the 7 great Brahmana sages, Atri was one. In his family, the great Prachetas were also born. Atri Muni had 2 Kshatriya sons who became kings. 2 Kshatriya sons who became kings. King Artama is one of them. He is counted as one of the 21 Prajapatis. His wife's name was Anusuya, and he helped Maharaj Parikshit in his great sacrifices. Kaushika, one of the permanent rishi members of the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthir. He sometimes met Lord Krishna. There are several other sages of the same name. Sudarshana, this will which is accepted by the personality of Godhead, Vishnu or Krishna, as his personal weapon is the most powerful weapon, greater than the Brahmastras or similar other disastrous weapons. In some of the Vedic literatures, it is said that Agni Dev, the fire god, presented this weapon to Lord Sri Krishna, but factually this weapon is eternally carried by the Lord. Agni Dev presented this weapon to Krishna in the same way that Rukmini was given by Maharaj Rukma to the Lord. The Lord accepts such presentations from his devotees, even though such presentations are eternally his property. There is an elaborate description of this weapon in the Adi Parva of the Mahabharata. Lord Sri Krishna used this weapon to kill Shishupal, a rival of the Lord. He also killed Shalva by this weapon, and sometimes he wanted his friend Arjuna to use it to kill his enemies. Okay. Text 8. And many others like Shukadev Goswami and other purified souls, Kashapa and Angirasa, and others, all accompanied by their respective disciples, arrived there. Purport. Shukadev Goswami, or Brahmarata, the famous son and disciple of Sri Vyasadeva, who taught him first the Mahabharata and then Srimad Bhagavatam. Shukadev Goswami resided 1 recited 1,400,000 verses of the Mahabharata in the councils of the Gandharvas, Yakshas, and Rakshasas, and he recited Srimad Bhagavatam for the first time in the presence of Maharaj Parikshit. He thoroughly studied all the Vedic literatures from his great father. Thus, he was a completely purified soul by dint of his extensive knowledge in the principles of religion. From Mahabharata Sabha Parva 411, it is understood that he was also present in the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthir and at the fasting of Maharaj Parikshit. It's understood that he was present at the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthir and at the fasting of Maharaj Parikshit. As a bona fide disciple of Sri Vyasadeva, he inquired from his father very extensively about religious principles and spiritual values, and his great father also satisfied him by teaching him the yoga system by which one can attain the spiritual kingdom, the difference between fruitive work and empiric knowledge, the ways and means of attaining spiritual realization, the four ashramas, namely student life, householder life, retired life, and renounced life, the sublime position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the process of seeing him eye to eye, the bona fide candidate for receiving knowledge, the consideration of the five elements, the unique position of intelligence, the consciousness of the material nature and the living entity, the symptoms of the self-realized soul, the working principles of the material body, the symptoms of the influential modes of nature, the tree of perpetual desire, and psychic activities. Sometimes he went to the sun planet with the permission of his father and Naradaji. Descriptions of his travel in space are given in the Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata. At last, he attained the transcendental realm. He is known by different names like Araneya, Arunisutta, Vyasaki, and Vyasatmaja. Wow. Kashyapa, one of the Prajapatis, the son of Marichi and one of the sons-in-law of Prajapati Daksha. He is the father of the gigantic bird Garuda, who was given elephants and tortoises as eatables. He married 13 daughters of Prajapati Daksha, and their names are Aditi, Diti, Danu, Kashta, Arishta, Surasa, Ila, Muni, Krodavasa, Tamra, Sarabi, Sarama, and Timi. He begot many children, both demigods and demons, by those wives. From his first wife, Aditi, all the 12 Adityas were born. One of them is Vamana, the incarnation of Godhead. This great sage, Kashyapa, was also present at the time of Arjuna's birth. He received the presentation of the whole world from Parashuram. And later on he asked Parashuram to go out of the world. His other name is Arishtanemi. He lives on the northern side of the universe. Angirasa. He is the son of Maharshi Angira and is known as Brihaspati, the priest of the demigods. It is said that Dronacharya was his partial incarnation. Shukracharya was the spiritual master of the demons, and Brihaspati challenged him. His son is Kacha, and he delivered the fire weapon first to Bharadwaj Muni. He begot 6 sons, like the fire god, by his wife Chandramasi, one of the reputed stars. He could travel in space, and therefore he could present himself even in the planets of Brahmaloka and Indraloka. He advised the king of heaven, Indra, about conquering the demons. Once he cursed Indra, who thus had to become a hog on the earth and was unwilling to return to heaven. Such is the power of the attraction of the illusory energy. Even a hog does not wish to part with its earthly possessions in exchange for a heavenly kingdom. He was the religious preceptor of the natives of different planets. Text 9. Bhishmadev, who was the best amongst the 8 Vasus, received and welcomed all the great and powerful rishis who were assembled there, for he knew perfectly all the religious principles according to time and place. Purport. Expert religionists know perfectly well how to adjust religious principles in terms of time and place. All the great acharyas, or religious preachers or reformers of the world, executed their mission by adjustment of religious principles in terms of time and place. There are different climates and situations in different parts of the world, and if one has to discharge his duties to preach the message of the Lord, he must be expert in adjusting things in terms of the time and place. Bhishmadev was one of the 12 great authorities in preaching this cult of devotional service, and therefore he could receive and welcome all the powerful sages assembled there at his deathbed from all parts of the universe. He was certainly unable at that time to welcome and receive them physically, because he was neither at his home nor in a normal, healthy condition. But he was quite fit by the activities of his sound mind, and therefore he could utter sweet words with hearty expressions, and all of them were well received. One can perform one's duty by physical work, by mind, and by words, and he knew well how to utilize them in the proper place, and therefore there was no difficulty for him to receive them, although physically unfit. Text 10. Lord Sri Krishna is situated in everyone's heart, yet he manifests his transcendental form by his internal potency. This very Lord was sitting before Bhishmadev, and since Bhishmadev knew his glories, he worshipped him duly. Purport. The Lord's omnipotency is displayed by his simultaneous presence in every place. He is present always in his eternal abode, Goloka Vrindavan, and still he is present in everyone's heart and even within every invisible atom. He is when he manifests his eternal transcendental form in the material world, he does so by his internal potency. The external potency or the material energy has nothing to do with his eternal form. All these truths were known to Sri Bhishmadev, who worshipped him accordingly. Text 11. The sons of Maharaj Pandu were sitting silently nearby, overtaken with affection for their dying grandfather. Seeing this, Bhishmadev congratulated them with feeling. There were tears of ecstasy in his eyes, and he was overwhelmed by love and affection. Purport. When Maharaj Pandu died, his sons were all small children, and naturally they were brought up under the affection of elderly members of the royal family, specifically by Bhishmadev. Later on, when the Pandavas were growing up, they were cheated by cunning Duryodhana and company, and Bhishmadev, although he knew that the Pandavas were innocent and were unnecessarily put into trouble, could not take the side of the Pandavas for political reasons. At the last stage of his life, when Bhishmadev saw his most exalted grandsons, headed by Maharaj Yudhishthir, sitting very gently at his side, the great warrior grandfather could not check his loving tears, which were automatically flowing from his eyes. He remembered the great tribulations suffered by his most pious grandsons. Certainly, he was the most satisfied man because of Yudhishthir's being enthroned in place of Duryodhana, and thus he began to congratulate them. Text 12. Bhishmadev said, "Oh, what terrible sufferings and what terrible injustices you good souls suffer for being the sons of religion personified. You did not deserve to remain alive. You did not deserve to remain alive under those tribulations, yet you were protected by the Brahmanas, God, and religion." Purport. Maharaj Yudhishthir was disturbed due to the great... I wonder... Sorry. Our Yudhishthira was disturbed due to the great massacre in the battle of Kurukshetra. Bhishmadev could understand this, and therefore he spoke first of the terrible sufferings of Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was put into difficulty by injustice only, and the battle of Kurukshetra was fought just to counteract this injustice. Therefore, he should not regret the great massacre. He wanted to point out particularly that they were always protected by the Brahmanas, the Lord, and religious principles. As long as they were protected by these three important items, there was no cause of disappointment. They were protected by the Brahmanas, the Lord, and religious principles. As long as they were protected by these three important items, there was no cause of disappointment. Thus, Bhishmadev encouraged Maharaj Yudhishthira to dissipate his despondency. As long as a person is fully in cooperation with the wishes of the Lord, guided by the bona fide Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and strictly following religious principles, one has no cause for despondency. However trying the circumstances of life, as long as a person is fully in cooperation with the wishes of the Lord, guided by the bona fide Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and strictly following religious principles, one has no cause for despondency, however trying the circumstances of life. Bhishmadev, as one of the authorities in the line, wanted to impress this point upon the Pandavas. Text 13. As far as my daughter-in-law Kunti is concerned, upon the great general Pandu's death, she became a widow with many children, and therefore she suffered greatly. And when you were grown up, she suffered a great deal also because of your actions. Purport. The sufferings of Kunti Devi are doubly lamented. She suffered greatly because of early widowhood and to get her minor children brought up in the royal family. And when her children were grown up, she continued to suffer because of her son's actions. So her sufferings continued. This means that she was destined to suffer by providence, and this one has to tolerate without being disturbed. Text 14. In my opinion, this is all due to inevitable time, under whose control everyone in every planet is carried, just as the clouds are carried by the wind. Purport. There is control by time all over the space within the universe, as there is control by time all over the planets. All the big gigantic planets, including the sun, are being controlled by the force of air, as the clouds are carried by the force of air. Similarly, the inevitable kala, or time, controls even the actions of the air and other elements. Everything, therefore, is controlled by the supreme kala, a forceful representative of the Lord within the material world. Thus, Yudhishthira should not be sorry for the inconceivable action of time. Everyone has to bear the actions and reactions of time as long as one is within the conditions of the material world. Yudhishthira should not think that he had committed sins in his previous birth and is suffering the consequence. Even the most pious has to suffer the condition of material nature. But a pious man is faithful to the Lord, for he is guided by the bona fide Brahmana and Vaishnava, following the religious principles. These three guiding principles should be the aim of life. One should not be disturbed by the tricks of eternal time. Even the great controller of the universe, Brahmaji, is also under the control of that time. Therefore, one should not grudge being thus controlled by time, despite being a true follower of religious principles. Text 15. Oh, how wonderful is the influence of inevitable time! It is irreversible otherwise. How can there be reverses in the presence of King Yudhishthira, the son of the demigod controlling religion, Bhima, the great fighter with the club, the great bowman Arjuna with his mighty weapon Gandiva, and above all the Lord, the direct well-wisher of the Pandavas, Purport. As far as the material or spiritual resources were required, there was no scarcity in the case of the Pandavas. Materially, they were well equipped because two great warriors, namely Bhima and Arjuna, were there. Spiritually, the king himself was the symbol of religion, and above all of them, the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, was personally concerned with their affairs as the well-wisher. And yet, there were so many reverses on the side of the Pandavas. Despite the power of pious acts, the power of personalities, the power of expert management, and the power of weapons under the direct supervision of Lord Krishna, the Pandavas suffered so many practical reverses, which can only be explained as due to the influence of Kala, inevitable time. Kala is identical with the Lord himself, and therefore the influence of Kala indicates the inexplicable wish of the Lord himself. There is nothing to be lamented when a matter is in the control. Sorry. There is nothing to be lamented when a matter is beyond the control of any human being. Text 16. O king, no one can know the plan of the Lord Sri Krishna. Even the great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. Purport. The bewilderment of Maharaj Yudhishthira over his past sinful acts and the resultant sufferings, etc., is completely negated by the great authority Bhishma, one of the 12 authorized persons. Bhishma wanted to impress upon Maharaj Yudhishthira that since time immemorial, no one, including such demigods as Shiva and Brahma, could ascertain the real plan of the Lord. So what can we understand about it? It is useless also to inquire about it. Even the exhaustive philosophical inquiries of sages cannot ascertain the plan of the Lord. The best policy is simply to abide by the orders of the Lord without argument. Were never due to their past deeds. The Lord had to execute the plan of establishing the kingdom of virtue, and therefore his own devotees suffered temporarily in order to establish the conquest of virtue. Bhishma Dev was certainly satisfied by seeing the triumph of virtue, and he was glad to see King Yudhishthira on the throne, although he himself fought against him. Even a great fighter like Bhishma could not win the battle of Kurukshetra because the Lord wanted to show how vice cannot. Sorry, because the Lord wanted to show that vice cannot conquer virtue, regardless of who tries to execute it. Bhishma Dev was a great devotee of the Lord, but he chose to fight against the Pandavas by the will of the Lord, because the Lord wanted to show that a fighter like Bhishma cannot win on the wrong side. Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. See you tomorrow. Haribol.